Welcome to the Samplecast big review of Orchestral Tools Berlin Brass. Now, I covered a lot of the features of Berlin Brass last week in Samplecast 29, so head on over to that for a bit more information, but this is the review. I've been playing with Berlin Brass for a few days and I've definitely got a handle on it now. So the basic information is that it's about €800. It's had a couple of discounts in the early stages and pre-sales, but the proper price is €800. It runs in the full version of Contact and Contact Player 2. It's 185 gigabytes compressed, which is obviously quite a huge library. And here you've got 4 horns, 3 trumpets, 2 trombones, a bass trombone and a tuba. And they've all been sampled in multiple articulations. You've also got ensemble patches which have been captured from all the samples of the instruments playing together. There's 3 different types of attacks here and 3 different legato styles, and there's loads of articulations. I'm not going to run down all of them, but you've got trills, swells, crescendo, legato, repetition, that sort of thing. There's a full list online if you want the information about those. One thing that's worth mentioning is there's no mutes in this library. So Berlin Brass took a long time to delve into and really get into the nitty-gritty of what was available. There are so many articulations and so many different microphone positions that it took a while to go through everything, but I've kind of sorted out what I liked and what I didn't like about the library into 2 very distinct categories. So first off, the pros. Now, the sounds for each player's instrument are very individual. You can hear the difference between the players and hear where they're placed in the soundstage. I really love that. The players do mix well together nicely with one another, and you can sort of sense the different players. So if you've got a horn section playing, you can hear, even if you've got the same MIDI data, you can hear where those players are. It's a really lovely effect, not something I'd heard a great deal of before. I do like the way the library handles the different articulations, both in the capsule system and also the individual articulations themselves. Trills are a highlight. You just play one key, hold down one key and play another, and it will work out the trill for you. Also, the runs sound great, and the legato switches in automatically when you play fast, so you get a different sound. You don't have to think about using the runs patch particularly. You can just play fast and that legato style will kick in. I do also love the Zampano trumpet. You get a kind of Old West vibe from that. I mentioned the capsule system before. It was something that I had no problem with myself because I've already got Berlin Winds and I'm well used to playing with that. I have to say the capsule system is really useful. You can basically load your own articulations onto individual key switches and switch between them quite easily. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basics. The capsule system is something which maybe new users will have to spend a little time getting used to, but I'm really glad that that system has been maintained in Berlin Brass. Overall, Berlin Brass is a great library and I really love the way it played. I love the sound of it, but I'm going to be incredibly nitpicky here with some of the details. And I think it is important because this library, as I said at the beginning of the review, is €800. So it is not a cheap library at all, and it's something that I was expecting to be pretty much perfect out of the box. Of course, no library is going to be perfect, but there's definitely some real niggles that I had problems with here. First off, the size of the library. Some people are going to need to buy new hard drives because of this, but it is massive, so that's going to be a little bit too much for some people's system, especially when you start to add in the additional mic positions and lots of articulations in the capsule system. So the size of this library is going to be prohibitive for some people, and certainly for me, if I was using a mobile rig, I would probably find this pretty much unusable. It would be nice if Orchestral Tools provided some light patches so that people that were on the run or didn't have such big systems could actually download this and still get some use out of it. Also, the fact that they haven't included any mutes does mean that there's going to be another purchase further down the line to include those. Nothing against libraries that come in sections, but obviously some libraries in similar and even slightly cheaper price brackets do include mutes, so that's a bit of a deal for me. Now on to something which is a little bit of a bigger deal. There are some big inconsistencies in the playing and the dynamics, especially this is apparent when using Close Mics 1 and Close Mics 2. So I'll give you an example. The Horn 3 sustained accent patch has much more attack on some notes than on others. That's obviously a playing and editing problem, but it's something that I definitely noticed. I also spotted some horrible clicking loops that were no good at all. This was especially prevalent in the lowest dynamic of Horn 3 legato. On the notes below middle C, specifically the F was particularly bad. I didn't have time to go through everything, but I did notice it on a couple of other instruments too. Some of the legato scripting is also a bit dodgy. When you play the instruments in the extended range, this does happen as well. You get a kind of an up and then a down effect, which I'm sure is not perfect. Trumpet 3 is especially guilty of this. Now, as I said, I am being very fussy, but because the library is quite expensive, I would have expected these problems to be smoothed out before release. That said, Orchestral Tools have a good reputation for updating their products and responding to feedback. I took a little look at the version of Berlin Winds that I own. It's actually 1.7, and I looked on the website and Berlin Winds has been updated to 2.1 in the meantime. So there have been lots of updates to that over the last few years as that has been released, and I expect that Berlin Brass will also have updates as well. So in conclusion, I think this is a really good start for Berlin Brass, and although it has a few teething troubles, I've heard some stunning work online already by those who've picked the library up nice and early. Those early adopters will perhaps be feeling a little bit hacked off by some of the bugs and artifacts, but they did probably get it for about €200 less than the normal price, so I don't feel too sad for them, I have to say. In terms of the marketplace, I think that if I already had the new Spitfire brass or East West Hollywood brass or Cine Samples Cine brass, I would have to think very carefully before dropping €800 on another brass library. But if it's any consolation, I think that Orchestral Tools are really in this for the long haul, and some of those other libraries that I mentioned, perhaps they won't be as updated as often or for as long a time as Orchestral Tools will be. So I'd like to say if Orchestral Tools are happy to keep updating Berlin Brass and ironing out those bugs, then I'm happy to recommend it. Thank you so much for watching. That's just a small taste of the Samplecast, a weekly podcast and YouTube show for sample library geeks and plugin enthusiasts. You can find out more information at thesamplecast.com. Don't forget to subscribe.